Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I'm in Egypt, and I'm actually on the Sinai Peninsula right now. One of the things that I'm here to do is to make a story about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and their trek to Mount Sinai. Now, there's a lot of kind of misunderstandings and a lot of different theories about Mount Sinai, where it is, how they got there. And the Bible it gives a very detailed account of their journey to Mount Sinai, where they received the Ten Commandments and all that, for those of you who don't know the story. It gives a very detailed account, but we don't quite know where all those places that are mentioned in that account are. And so there's a lot of sort of disagreement on that. But we're here to kind of try to track down the actual places. So we've been traveling now for a few days out here, looking at Jethro's caves, looking at the oases that they likely stayed at when they came across, following the route of the Exodus into Saudi Arabia. Yep. Can you kind of describe that step by step, what is believed, starting from the Sinai Peninsula, when the Egyptians were after the Israelites, and they came down and crossed the sea?
Yeah, so obviously, whatever Mount Sinai site you pick, you then have to fit in the route they took. So if there's no way to walk to that Mount Sinai, then you have a problem with your Exodus route. So if Mount Sinai is where we think it is here in northwest Saudi Arabia, then you have to look at how did the Israelites get there. And so if you backtrack, according to the biblical account, the Israelites lived in Goshen, which was the best of the land of ancient Egypt. And we all know, everyone agrees that Goshen was northeast Nile Delta area by the Mediterranean coast. And that was their starting point. On Passover, they were in their homes. The next morning, it says they left. And they had 3 camping sites until they got to the Red Sea crossing. There was Sukkoth, Etham, and then the actual Red Sea itself, where it says they camped. And that is where Pharaoh caught up to them. So most traditional scholars believe that these 3 camping sites were just one day's journey apart, and so they put the Red Sea crossing right on the eastern borders of ancient Egypt, where there's just a bunch of marshy lakes. And to them, this is where they look for it. But if you look at even historical documents going back to Josephus, you'll find that he writes about the Red Sea crossing being this wilderness area with mountains blocking their progress and them being caught at the sea. And there is no mountains, zero way to get lost on that eastern marshy lake area. And so you have to look for another Red Sea crossing. And so if Mount Sinai is in the land of Midian, then that opens up the possibility of the Gulf of Aqaba, which is part of the Red Sea, is the real area where they crossed over. And there's only one spot on the Gulf of Aqaba that has all of these factors coming together, where you have mountains enclosing a large beach that could fit the Israelites and the Egyptian army, that has a walkable path underwater, and also has a large beach area on the other side of Midian. And so that's at the Nuweiba, Egypt crossing site in the Sinai Peninsula. So from there, then, you have to find a way for them to get to the mountain of Moses. And so from the Nuweiba crossing, you can go inland. There are wadis, these dry riverbeds. They act like natural roadways. And you can walk them all the way to these different watering holes. And Moses knew this area. He was a shepherd for 40 years. And he was taking the Israelites to the different spots where they could get water for their flocks and for themselves. And it was only at Rephidim, their final camping site before they camped at Mount Sinai, where they complained about the water, or lack of water. And that's where God struck the rock and it split. And it says in Psalms, rivers of water came out. And that's actually where we're going to today, to go check out this possible site with a giant split rock on the western side of Mount Sinai.
How long do you suppose that they stayed at Mount Sinai?
Well, the Bible actually gives the time frame in Numbers, and they stayed there for almost 1 year. It says 11 months.
So it must have been. You could tell just looking at it yesterday. Like if they stayed here, they stayed here for a while. It
Yeah.
wasn't just a couple of nights, right?
And what you'll notice, like on the eastern side of this Jebel Allah's range, this is the side that has the large encampment where they would have been for 11 months. It's a high desert with green foliage growing out there. It's cooler in the summer versus we're going to be on the western side today, which is a lot hotter and lower elevation. But on the other side, you'll find Bedouins living there in like little towns currently today. And this is the area we believe the Israelites encamped.
Okay. So let's talk about the mountain itself. It appears to be burned on top, but we don't really know exactly what caused that necessarily, right?
Yeah, so when you're standing at the base of this mountain looking up, you'll see one of the peaks there, and it looks black with no shadows up there, no clouds. And we know that the rock is basalt. So it's been tested. Basalt is a volcanic rock. So this type of mountain, you'll find these in other places in the world where you have a basalt top to it, like a dark type of rock, and then the bottom, which is granite in a lighter color, pushes the mountain up. And so when the mountain's finally formed, you have the top black and the bottom in a totally different color. What is something we don't know yet is if that basalt is unique. Like, is it different from all the basalt in the world? I mean, I don't know how you would test it. What was divine fire? Like, what did God's presence physically change the rocks?
Yeah.
And we actually have sent samples off to a lab in Israel that has a high-tech nanotechnology lab, and we're just waiting for them to finish their testing on it. We'll let you know, too, if there's anything interesting on it. But otherwise, it could just be like how God's presence was at the burning bush, but the bush did not burn. His presence did not physically change the bush. So it could be that way on the very top of this mountain. But yeah, it's something we're still studying.
It's fascinating to look at. It's definitely, there's a lot of weird geological stuff going on that mountain. I've never seen such an interesting mix of the granite with holes bored through it.
Yeah, the wind shape.
And
Yeah, and they give
just all
these
shaped by the wind and everything.
weird
Just
shapes.
amazing.
Yeah.
Never seen a place like that. So, what is your takeaway from what you've seen with the Mount Sinai controversy and what we've seen here in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think if those who want to have physical proof or need physical proof for the Bible, this is something important because it gives you actual sites that match almost 100%. There's still questions like which wadi they walked up, but the main sites, they match the biblical account. And the Exodus has always been something that scholars today have disputed. Like, where's the physical proof that this even happened? It's a myth that was created later by Israel as to say this is how their country was formed. But with this proof being out here in the middle of the desert, I think it's very important for not just biblical archaeology, but for believers and those who are searching for something to believe in.